welcome back to the Film Fund podcast. I'm your host, founder, and executive producer at the Film Fund, Thomas Verdi. I'm also an award-winning filmmaker, producer, and film festival judge. I started the Film Fund to give filmmakers an easier, alternative way to get their films funded. Instead of working on a screenplay, crowdfunding campaign, or grant application, you write one sentence pitching your film for your chance to receive up to $10,000 and other prizes to make it. What are we at now? Our summer 2022 narrative and documentary funding contests are open. So check us out at thefilmfund.co. As I'm reading an old script here. Check us out at thefilmfund.co to enter your one sentence pitch for a chance to receive up to $10,000 to make your film. I want to remind listeners that contests do happen regularly. So if you are listening at a later date, check the website at thefilmfund.co for the most up-to-date information. Today we have Vinny Anand on the show, previous winner of the Film Fund. Vinny received a 3-month subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud, I believe, to help him in post-production of his short film. Vinny, thanks so much for coming on the show. Could you give us a bit of info about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. And so my name is Vinny Anand. I am a writer, producer, actor. I say that in order of what I do the most of nowadays. So definitely writing takes top priority, then producing, then acting. I also run a commercial production company. So I shoot commercials for high-end fashion clients for all across the media spectrum, tech. I do a lot of stuff with finance. So basically, I'm able to leverage the experience I have as an independent filmmaker in the commercial world. So that allows me to support myself while I go about making this, the indie films and the TV shows, as you know, not a cakewalk. So
That's awesome. Yeah, and we should definitely talk more often because if you listen to the podcast or keep up with our blog, we recently launched an agency sister company called FF Branded. We're doing a lot of corporate work. At least we're trying to. We got Comcast as a client earlier this year. Some other exciting big projects we're working on. It's a way to give the Film Fund community job opportunities because the way we produce them is through our community. So we get a client and then we send out an RFP to the community, and we like to hire from our community as much as possible. So yeah, it's and that's kind of what sets us apart, right? Because the independent film aspect, a lot of agencies, production companies out there, you get corporate people who are like, oh yeah, how hard could it be? We'll pick up a camera and hire, a cinematographer. But unless you're really practicing real filmmaking, you don't have that storytelling element there. So I think filmmaking and corporate videos really go hand in hand. That experience you learn in independent filmmaking really helps out and it translates super well. And that's even like just dealing with clients too. It's like you're able to identify stories in their solutions and their products, and you're able to convey to them the concept of the film. I just think it's a great way to make a living. At first, I was like, when I was in college or coming out of college, I was like, oh, I don't want to shoot, corporate videos for companies. I thought it was kind of like, I don't want to be doing that. But I think the more I've gotten into it, it's actually super interesting, and you can make them creative. So that's awesome, Vinny. Where
yeah,
are you based
I mean,
again?
New York.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, BK baby, all day.
There you go. What
So,
part? I have a friend who lives
Flat.
in Bushwick.
I'm in Flatbush, so
Oh, cool.
like 20 minutes south of
Oh,
Bushwick.
nice.
So,
The only thing I
yeah,
know
man.
is Flatbush Zombies is apparently like a hip hop group or something. That's everything I know
Yeah,
about Flatbush.
yeah. Like Pop Smoke got shot like 4 blocks from here. Like
Oh, wow.
yeah. It's pretty, but I love it, man. It's very Caribbean. It's very like me being a South Asian cat. There's a lot of like Indians here who you think you're Indian, but are like Trini or from
Oh,
Guyana.
really?
And there's like there's like an entire world down here that hasn't really been explored. There's a show called Flatbush Misdemeanors. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or not.
I
It's on
haven't, no.
Showtime. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the only show that's really like kind of like dived into the actual Caribbean community in New York because it's actually huge. Like people don't really realize there's a
Really?
huge community of Jamaicans, people from Trinidad, people from Guyana, people from all across. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Haiti. There's like a huge community, and like you like look at them and like, oh, you're just like they look, they're obviously like African American, like they're
Mm-hmm.
black, but their roots go into these places that like are very different than what you perceive. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a great place, and like it's a lot of space over here. Like I got like a 2 bedroom. I have 2 bathrooms
Oh, that's
in my
sick.
apartment. In the same
Wow.
apartment, I have 2 bathrooms. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So which is
awesome, yeah.
insane. Two full bathrooms to be
Oh,
correct,
wow.
Tom. Yeah, it's
Damn, look
insane.
at you. You're
Yeah,
living large.
I know.
Those corporate videos are really paying off.
Yeah, you know what? I guess what I'll say is that, like, like, so I'm an artist. My wife, she works for a corporation. She works for a nonprofit, a pretty big one, and
Oh,
so
cool.
her job is pretty steady. Artist job is up and down, as you know. And we were living in this like small studio in Upper East Side for like years, and it was
Hmm.
great because we were saving money and we are putting it away. And I was waiting for my break, obviously, and I was like, well, as soon as we get the break, then we can move out. And she was like, no,
Hmm.
you know what, like we're not living like this, and
Yeah.
I kind of fought her the entire way, but she dragged me kicking and screaming, and thank God she did, because she forced us to give ourselves more space.
Yeah.
And that is personally, professionally, and where you live really, really matters. I know a lot of artists, they get stuck in this very small bubble, thinking that like they need to like just keep doing what they're doing, and then like once the art pays off, then they can live life,
Yeah.
and it's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah.
Like, it everything gets affected by your life decisions. Your
Hmm.
art gets affected by your life decisions. And like a thing that I've always kind of told myself is that art is something I do while I'm here in reality.
Okay.
It is not why I am here. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's the amalgamation of your life that gives you the ability to make great art. So yeah, man,
Yeah.
space
It's
like
all about
is
your
a whole.
experiences.
Yeah,
It's in and when you're where you're living, you're immersing yourself in a certain culture and a certain ideology, really. Who you surround yourself with, your environment. Like I recently moved from um, one neighborhood in Philly to another one, and it's just a completely different vibe. I'm in Center City now. Before I was in Northern Liberties, and it's just a lot of people say like Northern Liberties and Fishtown is a little comparable to Brooklyn, and then Center City is kind of more like Manhattan. Although I hate to make the comparison because Philly's so different than New York, but just like it's such a different vibe. And I think it's so much more my vibe here. And it's just like it's night and day with how I'm experiencing the world. Like if I were to write something and I were still living in the other neighborhood, I think it would affect how I see the world and how that script would be conveyed on the screen. I was going to say on the page, but like yeah, where you
yeah,
live is so
100%.
important because you're absorbing everything around you, the energy. It's really what you how you channel it and how you create something. So that's super cool. I'm glad you love it in where you're living. Now, do you find that you take your experiences and your background and inject them into your work, or is it
100%.
more separate? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always it's kind of interesting because I feel like, so my mom is from Rajasthan, India, so she's Hindu. My dad is from Punjab, India, so he's Sikh. And so growing up, I grew up in a Hindu and Sikh household. And
Hmm.
so when I was younger, I really kind of leaned into the Sikh faith. I used to wear a turban. And
Okay.
funny story, I grew up in the South. And so I used to wear a turban. I grew up in the South. No one knew if I was boy, girl, Mexican,
Wow.
non-Mexican, what was on my head, and it was one of these things where I was so lost. I had
Hmm.
no idea what was going on. And then the cherry on top is that my parents, being Indian, they wanted their kids to have the best education possible, right? They're working 4 jobs each, and that was
Wow.
the dream. So they say, what, we want to send our kids to a private school. But they were Indian, so they were cheap, right? So they didn't. They sent us to the bargain basement private school, which was the Southern Baptist private school.
Okay.
So now imagine a Sikh turban kid who's learning about Hinduism at home and going to a Southern Baptist Christian
And
school.
this was in
You know,
the U.S., the South.
yeah, this is Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So you could. It was. I mean,
That
it
could be a
was.
film right there.
Well, it is. It's one of the films. Actually, it's kind of funny. Like that. So there's a film I'm working on called Holy Turban, and it's about a
That's a great
Sikh
name.
kid. Yeah, it's actually based on a true story. It's kind of funny because I look back at my life now and like I was meant to be a storyteller because all this crazy shit happened to me. But like the story is when I was in 6th grade, I was at this Christian school, and I had this teacher, Mrs. Templeton, real name Mrs. Templeton, and so she goes out like she's like, listen, why don't you, you're always kind of clowning around and you're like a goofball. Why don't you try something? Why don't you put your mind to something? And I was like, yeah, whatever, Miss Templeton. Like, I'm fine. And really, what it was is I used comedy as a way to disarm people because I was so different. Like I had
Mm-hmm.
no, like people had no idea what to do with me. I had no idea what to do with myself.
Yeah.
And so comedy became my shield, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
figured, man, early on, if I can make people laugh with me, they won't laugh at me, you know?
Yeah.
And like it was, dude, it was fucking confusing. Like I would walk into like a boy's bathroom and there'd be like an older, like 60-year-old white guy that's like from the South that's like, you're in the wrong bathroom.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, I'm not in the wrong, you know what I mean? And it's like
It's tough.
I'm
Yeah.
like I'm in fourth grade, you know. So
Yeah. That's hard to
it
handle,
was
especially at
it
that
was
age.
hard, yeah. And it wasn't even like the idea of like I was like, well, no, I'm in the right bathroom, and they're like, no, you're not. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's so there was a lot of stuff I had to process, and there's stuff I'm still processing, man, because it never really is fully processed. And so I
Yeah.
use comedy as a way. If I can walk in that bathroom and make that guy laugh, then maybe things will be a little less tense, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So comedy was always how I kind of dealt with just being so different. And so this teacher was like, "Hey, why don't you apply yourself one time? Okay, I know you're smart, but for some reason you hide it, you know." And so I was like, "All right, one request, Miss Templeton." She's like, "I want you to enter a Bible trivia contest." And I was like, "What?" "Yeah, I want you to enter a Bible trivia contest." And I was like,
She asked you to enter that.
she asked me to enter it,
Okay.
and I was like, I'm not, I'm not going to do that." She's like, "Come
Yeah.
on, come on. What's my one request? You have to honor it. It's like The Godfather, right?" I'm like, "All right, cool." Yes, I'll do it, but I'm not going to win. I'll go there
Mm.
and she's like, "Fine, just enter it." I was like, "Okay, fine." So I entered it, and I started reading the Bible, and I'm like, "Oh man, this is like a big family drama," you know.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
was like, "It really is." I'm like, you know, and then there's a lot of parallels to Hinduism because Hinduism has a lot of different characters. It is a big family drama. Sikhism has a lot of stuff, and I was like, oh. So I started to like learn the Bible, and I picked it up pretty easily.
Mm.
And true story, I went to Liberty University, where's Jerry Falwell country. It's the home of the Christian right, and I won a Bible trivia contest
Oh wow.
as a little Sikh turban kid. I won a
So
Bible
did you
trivia
did you
contest.
win this contest while you were wearing the turban? That's hysterical.
100%, 100%. I was on because just imagine the scene where you see this little kid on stage holding a Bible
Yeah.
trivia
Oh
trophy.
my god, that's crazy. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
and here's the beautiful part about America though. The people in the room were not cheering against me, they were cheering for me.
Yeah.
Because what takes precedent over religion in this country? Underdogs.
Yep. I'm from Philly, so we're the capital of the underdog, baby. I love
Yeah.
that. That's amazing. So tell
Yeah.
me, you said that is a film that you're working on?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
called
That's
Holy Turban.
Holy Turban. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And yeah. And so there was a lot of interest in that film. And what happened is that was like the first film that me and my partner were working on together. And so when we started shopping that around, people were they loved it. I mean,
Mm.
anyone I
This
tell
is
this
a
story
feature
to,
film or a
a
short film?
feature, a
Okay.
feature, a feature. People were like all about it. But what
Mm-hmm.
was happening is that because they hadn't seen our work, they wanted to buy the script and have us go away, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, well, you know what? We can't do that. So
Yeah.
what do we have to do? We have to go all the way back to the beginning and start making smaller pieces to build back
Mm-hmm.
up the Holy Turban. So by the time we got to Holy Turban, which is actually coming up now, the next year or so, we'll have enough things to show people where we go, no, no, no. Here's a
We know
script.
what
You
we're
want to be a
doing.
part
Yeah.
of it. We know exactly.
Awesome. That's a good plan. That's why we started the film fund too. Short films are so important, and it's such a good way to show people like, here's what we can do. Like, and it's on a smaller budget. It lets you experiment a little bit. It lets you learn as well. You're not jumping right into a feature. It's a playground essentially. I mean, there's still money involved, obviously, to make a short film with a high production value. You need a budget, but it's so tough to get that funding for shorts, and they're so important. It's like because you need to show, what do they call it, your calling card as a director. Like, this is what
Mm-hmm.
I can do. Here are a few shorts. um high, get me in. I want to be involved in this feature. This is my project. It's not just here's the script. I always think of Rocky. I keep dropping all
Yeah.
the Philly references today. Stallone, I don't think he had any experience, and he fought to, I think he took way less money than he could have gotten for that script for Rocky because he wanted to star in it and he wanted it to be his film, instead of just selling it outright. So that's a compromise he made, and obviously paid off. But yeah, I mean, shorts are a great way to get there, and we're expanding to feature film funding actually. And coming up in September, we're going to launch a program where it's going to be equity crowdfunding. Everyone's going to put in, a minimum investment along with the pitch, and we'll release more details about it. And then we'll, yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but we're getting into
Yeah.
feature
Yeah.
funding soon, so it should be
Nice.
exciting. So tell us about, you talked about some of the highlights about your work in terms of your background growing up, with religion and all the Bible stuff. Is that is that theme, does that permeate throughout all of your work, or does it really depend?
No, I mean it's kind of crazy because I feel like I lived like nine lives up until this point because I had that sort of upbringing in the South with the turban, and then what happened is that I cut my hair and I moved to a different part of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia,
Okay.
little more urban, definitely a different vibe than Charlottesville, and no one knew I used to wear a turban. So I kind of went from this sort of outsider, right, with the turban to this kid who now kind of was funny and knew how to be funny, but didn't have the turban.
Hmm.
So I went into this place and I became like the class president. I was like the
Mm.
homecoming king and I was like the cool kid,
So this was high
And
school.
this was high school. Yeah, I
Okay.
was a cool kid. But I never in my entire life have forgotten what it's like to be the weird outside picked on kid.
Yeah.
So like I would do stuff where like, as like the cool kid, even in like the cafeteria at my high school, I would go sit with like the per se loser kids, right? And I
Hmm.
remember I would do this stuff, and like the next day they were like the cool kids because I was like, I know what that's like. Like I know what it's like to be them,
Yeah.
And if I'm if
100%.
I'm in a position to ever be able to change their experience in any way, then why wouldn't I? Because
Hmm.
I've been them.
Yeah.
So it was so cool. And then when I moved to Richmond, my mom and dad they bought a motel in the hood. So like in this really rough part of Richmond, a place called Petersburg. My mom and
Okay.
dad they bought this hotel that it was right off 95, and this was it's just like 40-room hotel, and it was the halfway point between Miami and New York. And
Okay.
so this hotel during the weekdays was where like gangbangers,
Wow.
prostitution, drug dealers, a lot of firearm exchanges would go down because it was halfway between New York and Miami. So the whole deal was you meet me
Like,
halfway, and then
wow.
what I mean?
Like
And
like
then,
deals, like exchanges, like people were selling guns.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow.
I mean, there was gang fights. I mean, Petersburg still is a pretty rough place.
Yeah.
And it's got a Petersburg itself is it's got a whole history because it's where they first brought the slaves in from Africa. They would come to Petersburg,
Hmm.
Virginia, and then they would go from there and disperse throughout the South. So Petersburg
Gotcha.
itself has. So you see like Church's Chickens next to these like old rundown like plantation homes. You know what I
Wow.
mean? It's
Hmm.
real eerie. It's a really a crossroads of America.
Hmm.
And also, like I would say that like it's like really the beginning of like the South,
Hmm.
because Richmond is like the gateway to the South.
Okay.
So I lived in a hotel room with my mom and my dad. We shared. They slept on a
So you
bed. I was
guys
on
lived
a
in the hotel?
in the hotel. Yeah,
Oh
we
wow.
lived there. We lived there. We basically, we worked there full time. Like I even
Hmm.
during high school, I would the town was so bad that we would lie and say that I lived with my housekeeper next town over, a place called
Wow.
Hopewell, which they called Dopewell back in the day.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it was a rough. I mean, and now it's changed because Richmond itself is going through its own revival, and now it's a lot of people moving there. But it's still a pretty rough place.
Hmm.
And so I lived in this motel, and I would go to high school, and I would come home, and I worked a night shift. So I would see so much shit as like a 15, 16 year old, and
Yeah.
I had to learn how to hustle. Like I would
Yeah.
do things where like, because the weekdays would be like the locals, and the weekend was like the nice white folk. You would have
Mm.
like the families going back and forth, the
Yeah.
construction workers, and we used to pull scams like like we used to have the marquee sign. This is before internet, right, and phone and stuff. So people weren't like, well, not before internet, but before these things, before the
Hmm.
phone. So people couldn't just go down south and be on their phone trying to find like the best deal. This is when people
Right.
had to pull into a hotel, go and ask the price, maybe get back in the car, maybe go ask the
Hmm.
price across the street. So we used to have a marquee sign that you could see from 95, and it would say studio rooms 21.99, right? So people would see that, they'd always pull in.
Hmm.
Wow, we'll take a studio room, and I would wait, and I would ask them questions. I would wait. I would have my eye looking out the window. I wait for like the people with them to get out of the
You don't mean
car.
like $22 per night?
$22 tonight.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
$22 a night. 21.99. Yeah,
Wow.
and the people outside would wait, and as soon as like the people they were with would get outside, start stretching their legs, I'm like, cool. I'm like, I'll tell you what, sorry, we're sold out of those rooms. Like, oh man, well, what's the next best room? Because they're looking back, the kids are like running around, like they don't want to get back in the car. I'm like, it's
Right.
$6 more, no big deal, right? So it'd be $28. They'd pay it
Mm-hmm.
with tax, 31, 32, no big deal. Now here's the thing: there were no studio rooms.
Interesting.
So
So
the
what
entire,
would you do?
you would just sell them on a bigger room.
Oh, okay. The ones that were sold out, you actually didn't have any
You didn't
studio
have
room.
any,
Yeah.
right? You didn't have any. You didn't have
Yeah.
any studio rooms.
Mm-hmm.
There were no studio rooms. Like,
Right.
and so like it was. You would, so you had to learn at an early age how to how to
Yeah.
hustle. So that is a whole different life than back in Charlottesville, where I was like a turban kid in like the South.
Mm-hmm.
This was me living in a pretty rough part of the country, living in a motel, working there, living there with my parents, and dealing with a very poverty stricken place.
Yeah. I mean, that's as I'm sure, the living there was probably a bit difficult at times. I'm sure it was so great for you as a storyteller, all the experiences. And I mean, that's got to be invaluable, like having so much of that inspiration to pull from, just like the experiences you've had.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was so. And there's also a series. We shot 7 webisodes called The Royal Inn, and it's a series that was about this motel, and the whole premise is, so real talk. There was a white guy at the hotel named Laquan. He was a real person. Okay, his name was Laquan,
Not a
and
usual name for a white
not a
guy.
usual name for a white guy. And what he would do, he was like a white guy. He looked like Kid Rock. Okay,
Oh, okay.
and back in the day, the Tims were like the thing. So he would have like these like red sweatpants. He rolled them up halfway. He'd have the Tims on. He'd have a white T-shirt on. He would have like
Mm-hmm.
a red hoodie, and and his hair was like very like Kid Rockish.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he would do is every morning he would go to the Exxon gas station, which was across the street, which was basically the only source of food, water, beverages. It's a food desert. So the Exxon's
Mm-hmm.
where everyone goes to eat, right?
Wow.
And he would go to Exxon, and they used to buy these little like knockoff colognes for like $1. You get like the like fake like whatever Gucci, Calvin Klein, and he would douse himself in all of this cologne,
Oh
right?
my God.
And then but when he used to walk out of his room, he smelled like really good. And in in the hood, that's currency.
Smelling good?
Yes, it's currency. You see, that's the thing, right? Because people don't have the cars and the house and
Yeah.
this and that. So it's like these little things, like him smelling good, gave him some social
Wow.
currency in the hood. And
Mm-hmm.
it was stuff like that that really taught me about character,
Huh. Mm-hmm.
like, because that's a fucking character,
Yeah.
it's, like someone who understands how to distinguish himself.
Yeah. Yeah, he was able to give himself that leg up in a way that is completely foreign to me. Like, I mean, like, I think smelling good is important. Like, but I usually think about it if I'm going on a date or something, not to not to elevate myself in society. That's crazy though, but that's a great character. Like, you painted a picture of the character. You did an amazing job of that. Like, I can see this guy. I
Yeah.
can see Laquan. I can smell Laquan.
I can say, because right, so yeah, to answer your question, that's what it taught me, and like in about the nuances, because, and also like the crazy thing is that like when you sit there long enough, you start to you're like, okay, so like if I look around, I see poor infrastructure, I see a lack of healthy food options, I see little kids growing up in a hotel room, I see all types of prostitution, drugs, and all these things. But then I see something else. I see like the way that people treat each other, the way people greet each other. I see how people would really relish these little moments. I see how people will like hug each other, smile at each other, talk to each
Hmm.
other, because they didn't have all these material things, you know? And I would say, man, there's a beauty here that you can't find like Beverly Hills or
Yeah.
like so it's,
You get to see
yeah,
real people and really like humanity at
humanity,
a
exactly.
deeper level than Beverly Hills, I don't know how much humanity is really there. I don't know. I've only been to LA twice for film festivals. One was with the Film Fund, which is super exciting. It was who was it? Tim Viola, our first winner. Americana was at Dances with Films, and we just had another one recently. Um, oh my god, I'm blanking. It was called Freelance by Mike Urbino. That was just at
Hmm.
Dances with Films as well. I wasn't able to make it out there, but um, LA is an interesting place. Some people say there are a lot of phony people there. I was at the film festival, so I didn't go to Beverly Hills, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely very posh and fake a lot of the time, and getting to those real pockets of America you don't always see. It helps you. I think it really helps you create characters, and it helps you see how people interact, like you were saying. It helps you gain a deeper understanding of what the words people are saying actually mean and what their actions signify. Um, Whereas if you grow up kind of in Beverly Hills and everyone acts a certain way, then or New York or wherever, or even Philadelphia, some neighborhoods, like you're not getting to see real people. You're seeing like people pretending to be other people. Yeah, but yeah, so I think that's super super valuable. The background you have, and in terms of you using that experience and creating it or channeling it into films. Did you go to film school?
No, no,
Yeah, me either.
yeah, yeah.
Did you ever have an interest in going to film school, or did you? Where
No,
did you go to college?
no. I went to college
Liberty
at
College, right? You said, or Liberty University?
no. That's where I won the Bible trivia
Oh,
contest.
oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah. I went to George Mason University in
okay,
Northern Virginia, outside DC. And funny story, I graduated with an economics degree. And
okay.
then I went and worked corporate America for like
Hmm.
6 months, and I had a soul, so I couldn't stay. And I was
Yeah.
like, I got to get out of here. And
Hmm.
then when I was like 21, 22, me and my best friend at the time, we decided to go be real estate investors.
Interesting. So did you
Yeah, and
graduate from college early then? If you were
I
only
did.
22? Oh, cool. So you're
Yeah,
like super
yeah.
smart.
Well, I mean, I was good at economics. I could say that,
Okay.
and I think economics really, because I think the business of film or the business of being creative, right? It's very different than the actual creation of the art, right? Like
Hmm.
it's like two, like there you have to learn how to marry them, and in order to do that, you have to find, well, how can I make art that's true to me and authentic, but also has a commercial value because I have to pay my fucking bills,
Yes.
right? And this is what we talked about in terms of like doing commercial work, right? Like there is a commercial value to you being a filmmaker, and how
Hmm.
do you tap into that, and how do you kind of do what you need to do in order to do what you really want to do,
Hmm.
because it's I mean, listen, back in the day, artists were all aristocrats
Yeah.
because they were the ones that could sit around and think and explore themselves. Everyone else was in the
Yeah.
fucking field working. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So like, I mean that, and in our day and time, I think like people confuse like, because I'm an artist, I should be able to support myself, and I'm like, it's never been like that,
Yeah.
right?
No, you have to find that balance, and that's
You have
that's
to
why I
find
do
that
the film
balance.
fund. I
Yeah,
was an English major, started out in engineering my freshman year, hated it. Quickly switched to liberal arts, but I did an entrepreneurship minor because I was like, okay, I have to. I can't read books for a living. Like I need to inject some sort of practicality into my my education and my studies.
yeah,
So I started the film fund as a college project, and it just started gaining traction. And I'm lucky enough that it's related to my passion. It is filmmaking, but it's how I pay the bills. It's my job at the end of the day. We're not a nonprofit. Um, we're able to give away funding, which is so awesome. Um, and as much as I would love to be writing and directing and producing full time, um, you have to balance it somehow. Um, and so this kind of lets me split up and I'm doing FF branded, which is the corporate stuff too. So, um, but yeah, like I don't believe in the whole starving artist concept. I don't think being a starving
no,
artist and like you can be an artist without being poverty stricken and
yeah,
living in a shithole apartment. Um, no, I'm not saying like I'm not rich or making money hand over fist or anything, but like
yeah.
it's it definitely I don't I think you can still get experiences in life without having to be like poor. And I think it's important to recognize the skill sets that you have and to channel them into success because that'll give you when you're not stressed and you're not struggling, that'll give you the ability to create something. You'll be in a better mindset. So I think that's important.
And it takes the pressure off it. Like
Yes.
the whole. I
I
mean,
guess that's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
yeah, it takes the pressure off. If you have to only make money through creation of art, it's a lot of pressure, and your art will suffer. You know,
Mm,
don't get me wrong. There's plenty of things that have been made through that method, and they're great. But I think the majority of the time, that pressure does not serve anyone.
no.
And I think it's important to because like everything will inform your art, right? Like
Yep.
especially like, hey man, like look into like maybe there's some sort of passive income you can make. Maybe there's a different like being an artist. You're very open and you're very malleable, right?
Yeah.
That's a really good translatable skill in a workforce that now is very flexible,
Yeah.
you know,
And I've
and
noticed in my life, we all go through suffering. Mine was a little
yeah,
earlier on in life. I had some medical things to deal with when I was younger. You're not going to, generally, at least in my case, you're not going to create your art while you're going through that struggle. It's going
mm,
to take years of looking back on it, maybe not years, but it's going to take a long time for you to process it and for
yeah,
you to create something out of that. I mean, I'm sure it happens when people are struggling and they're suffering and they can create something in that moment, that does happen. But I think generally you need to take a step back and you need to be in um, that more low pressure environment years later, and you're able to reflect on it. You don't have that stress of dealing with the actual situation, and then you can create something based on it. So I think that's a super good, super important thing you point out.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and so like my belief, like what I my perspective on reality is that it goes from Hinduism, right? It's about the idea that like we all chose to have this experience that we're having. Now,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you believe that doesn't matter. The point is that the experience you're having is the experience you're having, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do two things. You can kind of go against it, or you can say, okay, I accept my experience. And my
Mm-hmm.
job is not to question my circumstances, but to get into the nuances of it, to understand the layers of it, right? Where is the growth, right? Because everything is trying to teach you, in Hinduism, there's this great story about there's a epic called the Ramayana, right? And the Ramayana is like India's like Iliad and Odyssey in a way.
Okay.
It's kind of like this huge epic tale that teaches you about morality and right and wrong. And in it, there's this guy named Ram. He's like our Jesus, and there's a guy named Robin who's like the devil. Well, not really, because Hinduism is not binary. It doesn't say that right, wrong, black, white.
Hmm.
Rob may have been like a bad guy, but he was also like a scholar. He was also very learned. He wasn't like,
Interesting.
and that's why I like Hinduism a lot because it goes against the binary. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not hot, cold, left, right, right, wrong. Everything Hinduism is a gray area. Like we're
That's so
all,
interesting because I think that
yeah,
I know almost nothing about Hinduism, so
yeah,
forgive me, but I think that's how life is. Life isn't black and white.
no,
So to study something that, like, I was raised Catholic, very
yeah.
traditional Catholic family. Um, I went to Catholic school. I almost went to Villanova, and it would have been Catholic elementary school, middle school, high school,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
and I was like, I need a different experience for college. But they
Where'd you
did.
go, by the way?
I went to Lehigh
Okay,
in
gotcha.
PA still, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about an hour north of Philly. Um, and it wasn't religious, and that gave me a lot of good experiences too, seeing just different perspectives of people. Because if I went to Nova, like, not everyone who goes to Nova is Catholic, but a lot of people are, so it would have just been immersed in that same culture. But um, yeah, you're raised Catholic in a certain mindset, like, especially the very really old school. I mean, I never had nuns, but like I had an ex nun. It's like, oh, you that's wrong. You're going to hell. It's like if you do something wrong, it's very black and white. So that seems super interesting, and um, that's how that's how storytelling is too. Like stories aren't black and white. It could go in a million different directions. That might be a bit of a stretch, but I think it's an interesting parallel to make too.
No, I would say so. It's kind of funny because growing up Hindu, I didn't even learn about it as much as I did in the past 6 months because I wrote this film that's loosely inspired by the Ramayana, but
Hmm.
takes place in New York City, and it's about this suicidal musician who gets rescued by his neighbor. And as the film starts out, it's a two-hander that turns into a three-hander, and then you realize that not
Okay.
everyone you're looking at is real. So it's like a
Oh
psychological
wow.
thriller, yeah, and it starts to get dark, but then there's moments of levity because the musician and the protagonist kind of comes out as a way to save him, but
Hmm.
the characters are named after the characters in the Ramayana. So yeah, Ram, Rav, and Hanu is the neighbor short for Hanuman. Hanuman's the monkey god. So the monkey
Interesting.
god you'll see throughout Asia, and so as I was researching this, what I found out is that essentially Ram has to fight Ravan because Ravan stole Ram's wife, right, and took her to Lanka, which is now called Sri Lanka. That was
Mm.
Ravan's domain. And so Ram, with the help of Lakshman, his little brother, and Hanuman the monkey god, go to Lanka. They kill Ravan. They capture Sita, right? Sita is like basically Ram's wife. It's symbolizing our passion. He gets his passion back. And so in the Ramayana, what happens is that when Ravan is dying, Ram tells his little brother, "Hey man, that's a really learned guy. Go talk to him before he dies. Learn wisdom from him." And Lakshman was like, "What? We just killed him. Like it's like go talk to him." Lakshman's like, "Fine." He goes. He's like, "Hey Ravan, man, my brother's like, I'm talk to you, but we killed you. Like, what can you teach me?" Ravan's like, "Nothing. You came to me with ego. Go get your brother." Right?
Hmm.
Lakshman's like, "Whatever. This guy's whack." He goes back. He gets Ram. Goes, "Ram, man, he doesn't want to talk to you. He wants to talk to you." Ram comes to Ravan out of respect, bows to his feet, and says, "What can you teach me, oh master?" Right? There's a guy that he just defeated who stole his wife. And Ravan says, "Because you came to me out of love, I will tell you, Ram. You see, I've been reincarnated 1,000 lifetimes to get to this lifetime. I knew that if I get killed by you, you are Vishnu," because Ram was Vishnu, the creator of all things reincarnated. "You are Vishnu. If I get killed by you, then I'm out of the
Hmm.
cycle of life and death. My dharma is done. I'm out." So you
Hmm.
see, I had to steal Sita. I had to take your wife because it was the only way that I knew you would kill me. So everything was planned, you know.
Hmm.
And when I heard that, it kind of it kind of blew my mind open because where I live in Flatbush, there's a lot of street cats. I've got two little cats, and I used to, for the past year, I've been walking home seeing all the street cats. I would feel bad for them. I would feel bad because it's hot, it's cold, it's loud, it's whatever. It's dark.
Hmm.
They're outside, and my little cats are inside. They have food, they have water, they have shelter. But something started to change because I kept looking at it, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of crazy though. They're outside. It's hot. It's cold. It's windy. They're outside, right? Like they're in one day, a street cat is getting more experiences than my little cats will get in a lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, then what's the
Hmm.
better experience? Like that's the thing. It's not better. Like that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
if you believe that people chose their experiences to grow and learn, then you have freedom, you have liberation, you have peace. Now, if you don't believe that, then hey, I'm not here to. Everyone has their own way, but for me, that's
Hmm.
what kind of has given me peace, has
Hmm.
given me some liberation. You know?
Hmm. That's so interesting. Very interested in Hinduism now. Uh, Probably won't convert today, but I'm definitely gonna. Seems like there are a lot of interesting, what do you would call it? Not fables, but that was a very interesting um, tale you told. Um, and and so that you took that and created your own story out of it. I think that's super interesting. I love um, drawing inspiration from religion. Really, I mean, I know Lord of the Rings. It was at Tolkien. He wrote a lot of. We actually studied some of it when I was in high school. We studied some of the things he wrote, or maybe that was C.S. Lewis, or maybe it was both. Anyway, it's super interesting. But
Yeah,
just talking about your projects, let's talk about your projects that you're doing with the Film Fund. Um,
yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us a little bit about that.
So it's called the Chili Score, and another true story. Basically, growing up Indian, I love spice. I eat
Okay.
very, very spicy food. There's a certain chili called the Indian green chili. It basically is this. It's basically the like the Thai red chilies. It's
Hmm.
that but green.
Okay.
That's the size and the composition of it. And so this is basically for us, Indian green chilies is like garlic to Italians. You got to
Yeah.
have it in Indian food,
You're
or else
speaking
it's
my
not
language.
exactly, or it's not authentic. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's whiz on a cheesesteak. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There you
So,
go.
in 2015, I was in Curry Hill. That's basically a part of Manhattan that's on Lexington between 23rd and 28th. It's in Murray Hill. Let's call it Curry Hill because it's all Indian restaurants on that
That's
part
funny.
of Lexington. Yeah, and so I was there, and I got my customary Indian food, and I'd asked for the accompaniment of chilies on the side because it's like ketchup on a hot dog, and they told me that they don't have any Indian green chilies, and I was like, what? So I left that place, and I went to a couple different places. No one had any Indian green chilies, so I was like, what the fuck is going on? Come to find out that there was a ban in place on Indian green chilies coming from the Dominican Republic. which is the
Hmm.
biggest exporter of Indian green chilies to the U.S. So I did a little research and I found out that there is a fly. It's called the Mediterranean fruit fly, Caratitis capitata, and
Hmm.
they had invaded the DR, had decimated the Indian green chili crops, right? So now all of these chefs were in a panic because Indians who are already cheap, you know what I mean, who like don't like eating out already. It's like, it's a decision that will make it, but it's a tough one to make. Uh, Now we're going to Indian restaurants and the food's not authentic, right? It's not spicy,
Hmm.
so we're definitely not going to go out and eat.
Yeah.
And so Indian chefs were panicking. They tried the serrano, they tried the ghost pepper, they tried the habanero, they tried the jalapeno, they tried the Scotch bonnet. No pepper could replicate the Indian green chili pepper, right?
In
Because
terms of heat level or flavor,
in terms of
because those are some
what,
spicy peppers you just mentioned. Like,
right, right. So the reason why the Indian green chili pepper is so rare is that it explodes in your mouth and goes away and allows for the other flavors to kick in.
okay, so it's not like a ghost pepper that just completely dominates the whole palate.
Exactly, exactly. It's spicy, but then it dissipates,
Mm-hmm.
and so that allows the other flavors in Indian food to come through.
Mm-hmm. Dude, you're making me
So,
hungry. I didn't eat lunch yet.
yeah, well, I mean, dude. By the way, my brother is he lived on North Fourth Street for about 7 years, and then he still has his place here. Then he lives out in Lansdale, so I know Philly well,
Oh,
man.
cool. I have a
Yeah,
friend from
yeah,
Lansdale too. He's actually
yeah.
Indian. Funny enough,
What's his name?
his name's Jigger Patel.
Wait, wait, Jigger Patel? No, no,
Yeah,
no.
he went to
Does he have
Lehigh.
a bro- Is he a pharmacist?
No, he's a consultant.
All right. Anyways, different. I know a Jigger
Funny,
Patel, but
he
he's a
told
pharmacist.
he is a funny guy. He introduced himself as Jagar all through college to people. He's like, my
Yeah,
name's Jagar. He even would say it's like cigar but with a J. That's how I
yeah,
remember it.
yeah.
And then as soon as he graduated, he started going by Jigger. And then, but now he claims like, oh, I've always gone by Jigger. I'm like, what are you talking about? And this is not true. So he's hilarious. So I don't even
Yeah,
know what to call my friend now. I still call him Jagar just because that's how I met him, and I've known him like since freshman year of college as that. But that would be
yeah.
so funny if you knew him. Small
That
world.
would be,
But
yeah, yeah. But no, I mean it's a great place. But yeah, I mean I Delisandro's and
oh,
South
Delisandro's is
Street.
great.
Oh yeah, man, I used to all those haunts. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, so essentially what I found out is that Indian chefs needed the Indian green chili. So what
Hmm.
they were trying to find it, right? And so smugglers, aka criminals, figured out that not every Indian green chili in the DR was spoiled. You see, the
Hmm.
fruit fly would decimate chili crops, but not all the Indian green chilies. But the U.S. government was not going to take a chance and sift through all the chilies and make sure they were good or bad, right? So
Right.
they just put a blanket ban on
Hmm.
these things, right? So criminals went down to the DR and started to take the good Indian green chilies, ship them up to New York, and then they would sell them for 25 times the price, right?
25
Five
times.
times the price.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Wow. I
So
almost want
like,
to say good for them, but it's
yeah,
illegal. So
yeah, yeah,
chili
and
smuggling. Damn,
chili
that's so
smuggling, yeah,
cool.
yeah, and so when I found this out, I'm like, this is freaking amazing. Like, what the? Can you just imagine like Michelin starred chef buying chilies off of like back
Crazy.
alley thugs named like you know, So I was just like, this is amazing. So I was like,
And now are these thugs Indian?
yes, yeah,
That's
100%.
so cool. I mean, not
So what?
cool, but it's like
Yeah,
this is
no,
I've
but it is cool. No, it is
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
100%. Like because and 100%, hell, yeah, it's cool. And like, and here's one thing I'll say also. Like, it's interesting. Like, I think a lot of the times when people get an idea, and this is why I think you need to be working on a lot of stuff. They try to do it right away, and sometimes that's not the best way because I think the hardest part about writing a script is to take a central premise and then package it in the most dynamic way possible. And
What do you mean by dynamic in this case?
so like I had this great idea, right? Okay, this the premise was there's a chili ban, right? Now, how do I package the world around it to make it a sellable TV show, right? Because I had my central idea, and now I need to understand. Okay, what is the what's the style? Like, what type of tone? What type of characters would be the best sort of pieces to fill in this world, you know? And like I thought a lot about like, is it about like the chefs and them and just about what they're going through? Is it like about like the people down who are smuggling? You know,
Mm-hmm.
is it more of like a real life thing where this thing actually happened? Is it a documentary? Is it like kind of like, you know, like a ridiculous comedy, you know, like knowing how to like you can have an idea, but understanding how to package it so that it has sort of a commercial appeal to it is very challenging, you know? Like because not everything should be a movie or a TV
Mm-hmm.
show. Like sometimes you have a great idea and maybe it should be a play or maybe it should be a book or maybe it should be a podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
you learn that like not everything needs to go in this medium, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I had the idea. I said, okay, let me take this idea, which is like this chili band, and just lock it away for a second and just let it like sit back there. And I know one day I'm going to see something that's like, oh, that's how I fucking do this thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so a buddy of mine, you know, basically he is this actor on the show New Amsterdam, and I think it's maybe it's done now, but he was a series regular, and he had
Cool.
worked with this, yeah, and he worked with this pretty big Indian actor named Anupam Kher, who's like, I mean, in India he's like huge. He's like the I'm trying to think of an equivalent. This guy's I don't know. He's like a it's like a stalwart in Bollywood. You know, he's been doing it for like 50 years or something,
Oh
right?
wow.
And so that guy played his dad in New Amsterdam. So he was like, hey man, like I talked to him, and if there's that, he told me, there's anything that you know comes across my desk that me and him could play in, let me know. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And I was like, that this could be right for the chili score. And then
Yeah.
I still didn't know yet, but then I watched Snatch. I rewatched
Oh, I love
Snatch.
Snatch. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, this is it right here.
You like
This is
dogs?
yeah, yeah. Like, you know, it's like
I haven't seen it in a
it's
while, but I remember that line.
yeah, you know, and it's like, oh, this is how the story has to be told. Like it has to be told like it has to have Snatch vibes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, you have this character like named the auntie who's like this 60-year-old sultry Indian chef by day who caters to like high-end Indian diners by night. She's a ruthless villain who like tops like you know like topples mayoral candidates. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like she like runs the underworld. You know what I mean? Then you have like a guy who's like this. You know, he runs the Indian Merchants Association by day. By night, he runs an illegal Indian gambling hall. You know, so you have all these people, and it takes place in Jackson Heights. Not Curry Hill because Jackson Heights is a bigger sort of you know stage for it. You know, Jackson Heights, Queens. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it,
I'm not. No.
but yeah. So Jackson Heights, Queens is like where it's like that's like Little India in New
Okay.
York. It's like where all the Indians are at, and so basically it's about these two guys that stumble upon the last batch of Indian green chilies before the ban takes effect. So now these green chilies become like the diamonds in Snatch.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the big criminals start to come after them because they want the chilies. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how it took me a while to figure out how am I exactly going to set the table for the idea to be a
Yeah. Yeah.
dish. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think
For
that's
sure.
what like I think that's a very like I think that's such a challenge. Uh at least for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
what's the most impactful way to tell this story?
Now, can we? I have your pitch sentence pulled up.
Yeah,
Can
please.
we read that?
Absolutely.
Cool. Some filmmakers, they like to keep it a secret until they release the film, but we're talking about it, so I figured you'd be cool. So let's see here. Indian chefs are left scrambling to source green chilies, essential to their food, after a 2015 federal import ban. We made a fictional film about this non-fictional event and need money for post. So that is where the Adobe Prize came into play.
Yep.
We don't do the Adobe Prize anymore. Vinny was a winner, I think, over the pandemic. It was
Yeah.
a while ago,
Yeah.
maybe a year or so ago. Um, but sometimes you do a post production prize sponsored by Maestro Filmers. But this was an Adobe Creative Cloud 3 month subscription that was to help him with post production for this film. And it's such a great pitch sentence. I mean, I'm always we talk about conflict a lot in the film fund, and just I want to analyze this sentence really quickly, surface level. Um, you have so many like conflict words in this sentence. You have scrambling, that's an action word. Source, essential, and it's just like all these ban,
Mhm.
federal import ban.
Yeah.
You can visualize the conflict. Like people are scrambling, they need to source something that's essential, and it's banned by the federal government.
Yeah.
So like that's really really compelling. Um, you have this thing that's necessary for their cuisine, their diet, their lifestyle, and they're scrambling. I just love that word scrambling. It's like they have no wherewithal. They don't know what to do. Um, and I just love it, and it makes it even more impactful that it was a non-fictional event that you're basing the story on. So I just like congrats on really killing that pitch. I think it's awesome. What is the status of the project?
Yeah. So we're basically finishing up. We have a couple pickup scenes that we're trying to raise money for,
Mm,
and so we're close. But it's like there's three films, right? The one you write, the one you shoot, the one you cut.
mm,
So right now we're still on the one you shoot.
gotcha. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, but yeah, we should be able to share it pretty soon.
awesome.
And what I want to say is that, like, the reason why the film fund and organizations like yourself are so important to writers is, I think that you force writers to express their idea to a wide stream sort of audience. Like, things like, we get very attached to ideas, and we kind of go into a vacuum, which you have to.
Mm,
But, like, the film fund is a place where you have to be able to come back out of the vacuum and be like, okay, here's what I pulled out of that. Now let me go and see if that resonates,
mm,
with other like-minded individuals who may or may not be writers, but who
yeah,
are somehow involved in this craft, this art. And I feel like it's invaluable because it gives you validation in a way. It also gives you a wake up call if it's too much insider baseball, because that happens a lot,
yeah. Mm.
So
I think that's amazing feedback. First of all, thank you for the kind words. We work really hard at the
yeah,
Film Fund. We're a very small team. It's me and a handful of freelancers, really.
yeah,
So like I'm the more conversations I have with entrants, whether they're winners or not, they always say it's been so valuable just to help me sharpen my log line and figure out help me figure out how to pitch this film to other people, how to convey this idea and really test the waters with it. I have a product development background, entrepreneurship background from school, and what they teach us is the MVP process, minimum viable product. So you
mm,
make the simplest version of your product or service you can, the least expensive. Don't spend a lot in R&D just to test the idea, and that's the framework, the mindset I take into the film fund. I want people. I mean, you can have projects that are already established, right? But I think the film fund is a great way to test ideas too that maybe aren't fully completed yet, or you haven't invested a lot of resources in them just yet. And it's like, okay, let's see how this idea does before we write the whole script, or before we shoot the whole thing, or before we spend tons on post production. Let's see, and then okay, this was validated. Now we can move forward and dedicate more resources to it. So that's kind of the mentality of the film fund, and it helps you experiment. It helps you get ideas out there. So I love that you're on the same page with that, and that you just thought of that organically too. I'm glad you found it useful.
yeah, man. Because, like I would say that, like, depending on what you want to do, some people just want to write the script. Some people want to, write and be a part of the production. Some people want to be part of everything. I myself am a filmmaker who wants to be a part of everything. And so, dude, it's a heavy freaking lift, man, to really take something and get it made. Look, if you're a rich kid, it's a different thing. But if to really go out in the world and get it made, it's like it's years. I mean,
Hmm.
it's years to years and years and years. And so, like, you better be coming to the film fund. You better be coming to other places like this to make sure the idea you're starting off with, that when that ship leaves the harbor, that you have something that okay, when I meet when I get to the other side, I'm gonna have something that people are gonna want,
Yeah, exactly.
because it's a journey, man.
Yeah, and that's I try to keep. I wish I could enter the film fund, but I can't. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think I don't want to say I made a mistake because I haven't. We just started submitting it to festivals. But for my most recent passion project, I try to keep my own stuff pretty separate from the film fund. Um,
Sure.
but it's called The Toms. It's a short film, dark comedy. In a world run by Toms, a man named Tim tries to infiltrate their secret society because he feels that his name is close enough. Um, and
Nice.
we got enough. It's kind of like a dystopian, you
Yeah.
know, black comedy, dark comedy, thriller, all mixed into one. And we got enough positive feedback on the premise that I just said, okay, we're gonna skip the screenwriting contests. We're gonna skip the grants and everything. We're just gonna go straight into production.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I'm looking back. I'm like, we really should have spent some more time on the script. I think it's a good film, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I'm super excited to see how it does. But I think getting that feedback early
Is
on through contests and through even just peers is important. Um,
It is important.
so yeah,
Yeah, no, but I also like understand what you're saying. Like as a creator, you're always like going to be, there. I wish I had a little more room and space, of course,
yeah,
But I, also,
exactly.
I mean, that's just the nature of creating something. You're always
Mm.
like, I mean, imagine parents, Jesus.
Oh my god,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, no, no, and like I would say like one quick thing, um, you know, so this last the film I was telling you about, 14 years, which was inspired by the Remind. It's a short film, 14 pages, takes place in New York City, and it's got some pretty decent. So remember Office Space?
Oh yeah,
You see?
one of my favorite
Okay.
movies of all time.
Oh my God. So that's so this is kind of crazy. The reason why I started writing films was because of Office Space.
No way.
Yeah, I swear to God, I saw that and I was like, that's what I want to do. I
Yeah.
want to make that. And what's crazy is that this film, 14 years, the Indian guy in Office Space, Ajay
Oh
Naidu.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I forget
Yeah,
the character's name, but
yeah. He's in 14 years.
no way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's insane. It's insane. And then there's another guy named Samrat Chakraborty who's like a really he's been in everything. Mr. Robot. Have you seen Mr.
Yeah,
Robot?
I watched
You-
every episode of Mr. Robot except like the last two for whatever reason, but I
all right.
loved Mr. Robot.
Do you remember in there? I think it was like episode one when one or two when he walks into the coffee shop and it's the guy. He knows that the guy is running like a porn server in the back is an Indian dude.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
that's that's Sunrise. I mean,
Oh cool.
he's done a million things, but everyone like Mr. Robots. Anyway, so like those two guys, and so what happens is he actually plays two versions of himself. So he plays Ram and Rav.
Oh interesting.
So he plays his shadow self. But yeah, so essentially that script, because there was a lot of different people involved, writing that thing was a nightmare because I had to go through a fucking committee for a short film.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, like it was
Wow.
really good because it
Yeah.
forced it to, and then on the
And what's the
production
status of
side,
that project? Is that released or is that still in?
it's being cut right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have three things in post right now. We have the chili score, and we have this film, and we have another short film we shot back in November. So we have three things right now in post production, and then we just had something that we shot 2 years ago. It was more of like a comedy skit called Coffee Chicks, and that just got into the Austin Comedy Festival.
Oh no way! Congrats.
Yeah. So I'm pretty psyched about that. Have you been down there at all? Have you been on the?
I haven't.
Down?
No,
Okay.
I need
Yeah.
to go. I
Yeah,
always
I heard.
get Austin Film Festival stuff, and I know Austin's a big film town.
Yeah. But yeah, so my entire point was that the short film we shot with the 14 years, the script took by committee, so it was just a lot of work. But I'm so grateful it was. And then we were supposed to shoot on December of last year, and then COVID hit.
Mm.
So it pushed us back, and it was a huge blow, man, because you try and shoot this thing. Obviously, there's money we couldn't get refunded. It was just, lifting a giant boulder up a hill, and then it falls apart. As you know, it's,
Yeah.
production is a whole different beast. And then we're supposed to shoot in Feb, and then that fell apart, and then we lost our DP, and it was, we had basically like funds were depleting, and we knew that we had one more shot at this thing, and that was what we shot in June. And then we finally, it all came together. We had a new DP. It was the right move, but the universe set it up like that. But you just have to, you got to keep going,
Yeah. Got to keep plugging. Hate to cut it off. We're having such a great conversation, but we are running out of time. I know you're past your time. You had to hop off by a couple minutes. So, Vinny, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak on our podcast today again. Do you have social media channels where people can check you out?
Yeah. You can just check me out. My Instagram handle is V for Virility. Virlity.
Cool. Check that out.
Cool.
And check out the latest contest. We're going to do a little plugging here. Latest contests. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Summer narrative documentary contests are open now. Check out thefilmfund.co to submit your entry. Check out our social channels. We are at the Film Fund on Instagram, Film Fund Co. on Facebook, Simply Film Fund on Twitter, and the Film Fund on LinkedIn. Check the website regularly for the most up-to-date information. Blog.filmfund.co. Sorry, blog.thefilmfund.co for great filmmaking and producing tips. Check that out. Sign up for the newsletter. We will keep this quick because Vinny has to go, but we also have an ebook. Check out the website. Lots of cool stuff. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. And if you're watching, we have this cool new green screen background, so I can hide my messy apartment behind me, which is where we run the company out of. Did you just take a screenshot, or was that me?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I took a
cool.
screenshot.
Love
Yeah,
it. Love it.
yeah.
Thank you so much again. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Vinny, before we wrap up?
Nah, man. Get those log lines working, man. If you can't get those log lines working, then maybe you should think twice about writing that script. So,
Exactly. Logline is
yeah,
so important.
so
So important.
important. So important.
Thanks, everyone, again. Tune in every other Friday for new episodes. We'll catch you later.